Welcome back, curry crew. Today we're making some delicious rosemary focaccia. So guys, for our focaccia, we're going to start with a large mixing bowl in which we have 2.5 cups of lukewarm water. Then into this, we're going to add in 2.5 teaspoons of honey, give it a quick mix, and then set it aside. In a separate mixing bowl, we're going to take 800 grams of all-purpose flour, and into this, we're going to add in 1.5 tablespoons of salt. Next, add in 1 teaspoon of instant yeast. Now give it a quick whisk to thoroughly mix the flour, salt, and yeast together. Then slowly we're going to add in the water and honey mixture from earlier and mix until partially combined. Next, we're going to add in 1/4 cup of olive oil, and once again, we're going to mix until our dough starts to come together. If you find your dough is still a little bit dry, feel free to add in a tiny bit of lukewarm water until it starts to come together. Add another 2 to 3 teaspoons of olive oil at the end to bring the final dough together and to ensure that it does not stick to your spatula while mixing. Your final dough should look something like this. Now we're going to cover it with a lid so that it doesn't dry out. If you don't have a lid, feel free to cover it with a wet paper towel, or you can also use, aluminum foil or some other type of cover. Then we're going to put this into our fridge overnight and let it rest. The next morning, we're going to place our dough in a cold oven with a pot of boiling water next to it for about 2 to 4 hours, or until the dough has risen and roughly doubled in size. Once your dough has doubled in size, add roughly 2 tablespoons of olive oil to a baking sheet and some to your fingers, and then gently pull the dough away from the sides of your bowl and allow it to naturally release onto the baking tray. Gently fold the dough over onto itself a couple of times, and then we're going to start to stretch it into the size of our pan. You'll have to be somewhat thorough with this step since the dough will want to pull back onto itself and retain its shape. Once the dough takes up roughly 75% to 80% of the tray, allow it to rest back in the oven with a pot of boiling water for about 30 minutes to an hour, or until it rises and doubles again. Next, you can then take it out of the oven and into 1/3 cup of water, add in a teaspoon of salt and mix until well combined. Then we're going to once again apply olive oil to our hands, and we're going to stretch our dough to fully fit the pan. Then, using your fingers, press down gently into your dough until small divots begin to form. This is one of the most fun parts of this entire process because pressing down into a small and airy dough is one of the most satisfying feelings ever. Once you are done, take some fresh rosemary and sprinkle it all over the surface of your dough, trying to cover each and every square inch. Then we're going to take some of that salt water from earlier and we're going to sprinkle it over the top of our dough and into the divots that we made. This may sound crazy, like why am I pouring water on my dough? But trust me, it will form an amazing outside crust while keeping the inside nice and soft. Finally, place the baking tray on top of another tray that has been sitting inside your preheated oven. The oven was preheated to about 450 degrees Fahrenheit or 235 degrees Celsius. And now we're going to bake our bread for about 30 minutes or so, or until the top is golden brown and the bottom is a tiny bit crispy. Once it's done baking, allow the bread to rest in the tray for about 15 minutes before transferring to a cooling rack. While it's still in the tray, pour 2 to 3 teaspoons of olive oil onto your bread while it's still warm. This is going to absorb into the bread and it's going to taste amazing. So here we have our final product, and man, oh man, does that look delicious. Once cooled, you are ready to dig into your wonderful rosemary focaccia. Enjoy!